Look at Bruce Lee and all the things he introduced in the 60s and the 70s. A lot of that was Indian philosophy, but it wasn't made popular until he started talking about it.
Right.
So those got that, knowing that martial arts is not just a physical system, but it's a mental structure, and it's also a way to live your life if it's taught to you that way. Like boxing, for example, is a skill set, but you hear about a lot of boxers in the news getting in trouble, right? A lot of issues doing this and that, and staying out late and hitting people. How many fifth-degree black belts do you hear about sitting at a bar, A, and B, getting. I mean, there are some of us, right? They're out there, but much fewer. It's very disparate. There's a reason for that, because of how it's taught. So I think that therein that lies the difference.
All right, welcome back to our Speak Life podcast. My name is Mark Me. We are sowing seeds today for tomorrow's harvest. Today we have a special guest, Chris Malarkey, President and CEO of the CMTKD, a traditional Taekwondo school in Belleville, New Jersey. Born in Brooklyn, New York. Montclair, New Jersey raised. You received a bachelor's degree in English from Montclair State University. You've been training in martial arts since you were 6 years old?
6 years old.
Earned a black belt under Grandmaster S.J. Kim.
That's correct. Big shout
And
out.
I've just learned that you don't have one black belt or one degree. You are advancing into your 6th degree.
That's right.
Black belt right now, which is very impressive, just the commitment in and of itself.
Thank you.
And you believe that the martial arts, it has the transformative power both on and off the mat. You're right now writing a book.
Yes, I am.
On your personal life and your journey through martial arts. So congratulations on all your success, Chris.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on here today. How you doing, my brother?
I'm excellent. Thank you for having me. A pleasure to be here. Grateful.
Well, we're grateful to have you, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not easy to do what you're doing. I don't say that lightly because, as you know, I want to highlight the fact that the commitment that you've dedicated to your craft is amazing. And the fact that you opened up a school and you're teaching it day in and day out is fantastic.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your background. You started martial arts when you were 6, so I want to kind of know, how was that introduced to you? How did you know when it was more of a thing you loved to do or a passion, or was it, or when it stopped being work?
Okay, great question. I got introduced to martial arts. The credit is due to my parents on that one, and particularly my mother, because I was, as a kid, I had a lot of energy. And in school, you know where I'm going with this, right? So I had a lot of energy to give, and in school sometimes that was viewed as me being distracted or otherwise, and that was during a time where they were classifying children, so trying to put them in special ed or all this, and my mother was very obstinate and said, you know what, he doesn't need that. Let me see if I can put him in an activity. And we happened to have Taekwondo actually right up the street from us at a dance studio at the time. My first instructor.
Is this in Brooklyn or
This was in Brooklyn.
Okay, got it.
This is all the way back in Brooklyn, and she took me up the street and had my first class, and I fell in love with that. And in leading up to that, I had seen a lot of people on TV. I watched Batman 1989, Michael Keaton. I watched Jim Kelly from Enter the Dragon. I saw Wesley Snipes, and I was looking at people who were doing this cool stuff, and I just happened to fall in love with it, honestly, I think from the first class. And
from day one, you fell in love with it?
From day one, I just love to move. I need movement, and in my life, I need to move. So being stagnant's hard. But yeah, that was it. And my transition into teaching happened many years later. I was teaching, got picked up and recruited to teach in Montclair at the time, and by Master James Marr, who's now out in Ohio, and he was the first person he had a business model for the school, but then was able to teach it to me like I was an owner instead of an employee. That got me to think about things very differently. So I was like, not only can I enjoy the hobby, but I also can make a lifestyle out of this as well. So
how old were you then?
I must have been 21, 22, coming out of college. And it was something I had my mind set on and just continued to pursue, really just by continuing to show up to teach classes we had 5 classes, I think, a day at that point. I was teaching four if not 5, every day, probably about 30 classes a week. So when I at my maximum, at my height, so 45-minute classes and intense classes, not, there's obviously an ebb and flow to what you do. If you have little kids, you're teaching them very different than you're teaching adults, but who are coming in at 8 o'clock at night. But nonetheless, you're giving people the best of you, and I kind of picked up those principles from home. I'm watching my mother and my father work hard at everything they did. My mother was an athlete, her sister as well, and my dad just continues to be persistent. So I picked up and harmonized those things, and hopefully it looks good.
Did you have brothers and sisters growing up?
I do. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. And
both younger. Okay.
I'm the oldest of all 3. So
have any of them taken up martial arts?
we're all black belts.
What?
Yeah, we're all black belts. We're all black belts.
Don't mess with these guys. Don't mess with the Malarkey family. I ain't messing with you.
I noticed, but no, they didn't stick with it as long as I stuck with it. But they stayed with it long enough to get their black belt, and then kind of transition into their different interests and careers, and doing well wherever they are.
Nice. So you blazed the trail in that regard. That'd be fair to say.
Okay, yeah, we'll take that.
When did y'all move out of Brooklyn into New Jersey?
That was the summer. I think that was the summer of 2001.
Okay.
Just prior to 9/11. So yeah, I think it was like June or July. Parents had we were in a apartment above a pizzeria for many years, so my favorite food is actually pizza.
I second that.
No guess, right? And then we moved to Montclair. Nice house, had a nice price. Nothing I was used to, right? I was used to apartment buildings and smaller spaces, and that took some getting used to. But that was a great transition, and then got me to they moved us because they wanted to transition us into better educational systems. Okay. We're finding it, I guess, overcrowded. Now that I'm a father, I understand. The schools were overcrowded in NYC at the time, and they just didn't want us to get lost in the cracks there. So I think that was a primary motivation. But yeah.
Nice. So let's talk about martial arts.
Sure.
Obviously there's so many different types.
Yep.
I get confused. I'm just being honest.
No worries.
I don't know one from the other. But for our listeners, because some people are interested in this, but they don't understand it maybe the way you do.
Right.
Can you start breaking down, like, what is the difference between, karate or jujitsu or taekwondo?
Got you. I'll take those 3 right there. So you've got some of the bigger differences, like a high level view of them, is really the origin, right? Country of origin. So karate is from Japan, Taekwondo is from Korea, jiu-jitsu itself is from Japan as well. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a modification of the Japanese system, the original Japanese system by some Brazilian, really brilliant Brazilian practitioners, and they made their modifications to it. Karate is actually very similar to Taekwondo. It's not that different, especially as I started writing the book. Going back and doing some history and looking back, there's a lot of similarities there in terms of how we generate power. Both of those are striking based as well, so energy based is what we call. Jiu-jitsu is more up close. It's more joint locks, more manipulations of the skeletal frame up close. Taekwondo and karate, for example, are from where me and you are. I can hit you, but once you get a little bit closer inside my range, it's becoming a lot harder for me to move on you, if that makes sense, or to generate power. So then that's when you make the switch over to something where you can hug and take somebody down to the floor.
I'm good where I'm at, bro. I just want to put that out there for the record. I'm good right here.
Absolutely. But yeah, that's kind of like some of the highlights, I think, of those styles. And then everyone's got sort of a branch off, right? Because Taekwondo at one point had more throws involved and more trips involved. There were different kinds of, you could synthesize elements from other martial arts within it and still call it Taekwondo, right? But then depending on the emphasis from your teacher and how you learned it, then that may dictate whether you broke off from that system entirely, or if you ended up saying, and I like to say this as well, all the black belts that run academies and whatnot, they are a representation of the art form, but they have their own spin on it.
Got it.
So, there are organizations. I'm part of an organization, great organization, Taekwondo International. There's a lot of schools in that organization. Glad to be one of the minority owners there. And a lot of my philosophies are a synthesis of what I've picked up from books and picked up from this person, that person, and I kind of harmonized it, which then ended up leading to CMTKD and what it is today and how it's taught, how things are delivered to you. The kicks and punches are the same, right? As you can imagine. The technique is a technique, but how you are taught to think about applying the technique, very different based on who's in front of the room and their experiences. So, yeah.
Strong. Yeah. So talk to me. I mean, there was a transition point where you said you had a mentor that was training you or teaching you how to look at it as a business owner, not just as someone who's working at the academy.
Correct.
And so what did that do for you? Like, what was that shift like for you in your life?
It was huge, and I don't say that lightly. It opened up. I was in college at the time. When I was going through this transition and learning that there's a capacity to do more and that somebody honestly believed in you to do more, because, you get raised a certain way. You get a good education, you go get a job, you go consume and do whatever else, and live a happy life and pursue the American dream. But my mindset was more entrepreneurial, I think, more than I had realized up until that point. And I think when we started discussing with my mentor at the time, those possibilities, like a whole new universe literally opened up. I was like, oh, I can do this, and then off of this I can do that, and this can be this, and this can be that. So it kind of fed something in me because I wasn't really made to sit down in a chair for 8 hours a day. I don't think anybody is, but it was nice to be able to open up the hobby and find a way to bring other people into that space. And his initial belief in me really translated onto the mats as well, because then my teaching started to change. Because then it was looking at things structurally. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? How should I do this? There were more goals. It wasn't just, sometimes people who are in education, you're providing people an education by allowing them to memorize. But memorization is not memorization's not mastery. Whoa. People who are concerned with mastery are more concerned with how more than what. So I was looking at not just climbing the ranks, so to speak, right? And like, let me just get to, whatever, 4th degree black belt, which is master, what we consider master. I wasn't really just trying to get there. I was trying to see what quality students could I produce? That's the big question that he left in my mind. There were more questions than answers. And I like that coming out of that, those interactions. But brilliant guy, and ran a very successful school. We had 500 plus students, I think, at the height, and I was managing all those students with him. So I was grateful. To come along on that experience, one of the best experiences I've had in my life. So, yeah, and now I'm here doing it on my own.
That's incredible, man. But where was that facility?
That facility is in Montclair. Okay. It's on Glenbridge Avenue.
Okay, got it.
Right on the corner there, the post office. So great school. And I made a lot of it's so many things happen in that space because you also learn to network.
Right.
Everybody that I can figure, if I ever got a problem, I comb through my contacts. I'm like, I know someone who knows someone who may know someone that can help you with that problem. It becomes that kind of thing. Someone, if you have a health issue, I think I know someone. You need a lawyer. I think I know this. I taught this person before. And all of that reverberates. Like, these people see me years later and they still remember. I never forget. I was in a, I guess it was not a parade, but like a kind of a festival. And it had been several years. Some kids I had taught from the time they were 5 or 6. And they are now graduating college. Right. And that's a long time. I never realized that. So I feel like a dinosaur, obviously, when I look at them. But then they, the parents give me so much feedback in themselves. People who are working now in stores and whatnot. And they're like, yo, I didn't. So one guy told me, he's like, I didn't like when my mom took me to Taekwondo. But whenever you taught the class, I loved it. Wow. I never forgot that. I forget the guy's name, but it was an amazing thing. I think that meant more to me than everybody who just naturally, gravitated toward the art. Wow. You got somebody that says, I didn't even really like the activity, but when you taught, I had the best experience. That's amazing. And that's what I wanted to generate for my students.
Right. And so you started your own practice.
Yeah.
What year was that?
That was 2018.
What gave you the where were you at mentally? What gave you the confidence to kind of push through whatever doubts you might have had?
Yeah, and there were many,
Trust me, I know.
and still are. There's entrepreneur. I read a great quote the other day. I think it said an entrepreneur is somebody that jumps off a cliff and makes an airplane on the way down.
Right, correct.
I thought that was a great quote. That's what it feels like. But 2018 is when I started. Prior to that and leading up to that, there was discussion. Essentially, I underwent an apprenticeship, and studying history. People would apprentice under somebody for like an average of like 13 years, give or take. I spent 11 years as an instructor there, eventually head instructor on the staff, managing people coming into work that were also teaching beside me. If you were supposed to be here on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock and I didn't see you at 7:45, you got a phone call. So, because I prided myself on being the first person there. If I was on the schedule. So leading up to 2018 was a lot of just kind of getting my ducks in a row, talking to the right people, seeing if can I really do this? I think there were more of those kinds of questions. And then I partnered with someone, great guy, and we ran the school out in Bergenfield, New Jersey, which is way up on the Parkway, exit 161. It was quite a drive. At the same time, my wife at that time was pregnant with my child, so it was a lot going on. So I had a new business, new baby on the way. So it was a lot going on. So I had a lot of doubts, but we ran that, and unfortunately, we ran into COVID. So we didn't even break even at that point. But we did shut that school down, and I just understood. Sometimes you have to take that step back. You got to retreat. You can't always advance. When you fight, sometimes you got to take a step back and allow other things to happen, and then you can move forward. So, yeah. Wow. It was definitely a learning curve. I'll tell you that.
That's a poignant quote, man. That one hit because that's so true. But to hear you say it in the form of martial arts, is strong.
Appreciate that, man.
You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you can't always advance.
Yeah, you tried, but you got to wait for other things to happen. So, especially if you just got hit, it's probably a good idea to move back.
Okay.
Reassess.
How to reassess the situation.
Absolutely.
I'm not mad at that, man. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, you mentioned that the school closed due to the pandemic.
Yes.
And so, what did that time do for you?
Ooh, that downtime?
Did you know that you were going to be reopening?
I did not. There's a great story around that. And a great question. That was the first time when we closed. That was the first time I started to doubt myself ever. Really, or at least to my memory, right? I've always been a very confident person. I think martial arts really helped with that. Self-esteem, confidence, not to be confused with arrogance or a lack of education. I knew that I was competent and confident, but I lost both a little bit during that time. And I actually put my belt in a box. I thought it was over. Whoa. Literally. So when I was talking to you the other day about, I thought this is supposed to be the thing that took me out. I put my belt in a box, uniforms, put them away. They had dust on them when I went back. So I was like, I think this is it. I need to try something else. This is not the field for me. Whoa. I'm not meant to do this. I literally had those thoughts running through my head. And you sat on it was great. I got time back with my family that I'm sure I'll never get back. And we were able to make some great connections, and everybody learned about who they were with at the time. And but I think what I started to do slowly was start to exercise. After spending a couple of months on the couch, I was like, I got to get up and move. Right. Like people are there's fear on the TV that's being marketed to us. I know everyone's got health concerns, but we have to sharpen our side. I was like, we got to take a different route. Right. You can't sit here and watch the news all day trying to figure out when the next thing's happening. Right. Let's go take a walk. Let's go do a few miles. And a couple of steps ended up turning into a few miles, ended up turning into 10 miles. And then one day a student of mine, a former student of mine, who's now a Curtin student again, thank God, and he called me and he was like, hey, are you teaching? Because I kind of need it right now. And I was like, I'm not, but I can figure it out. And I didn't think that was going to be sort of the genesis of the next transition, but it was. And then that turned into 2 students, and then that turned into 3 students, and then I was teaching people literally on the street, outside, on the street.
Word.
I was like, we're going to do this right on your steps. There's no excuse. You got steps, I'll put the pads here, we'll work.
Yeah.
But it taught me how to adapt to obviously the world, the global circumstances, but it also helped me get people out of their own heads, because I had just done that for myself.
Wow.
But I wasn't able to do that at the beginning of all this in 2020. I was worried about my health, everyone in my house, like, people breaking in next door. What am I going to do? Taekwondo don't stop a bullet. You know what I mean? So you're trying to figure out all of these things, right? And but eventually I got to a good place, and I think I took some really, really good people along with me, and that ended up becoming, I ended up buying a house and reformatted the garage, put mats down, and the idea kept growing. It's like the electricity in my eyes came back. It's like a generator turned back on. Like, I can do this.
Strong.
That's how I got to basically where I'm at now, and just kind of carrying forth that momentum and trying to build and take people to the next level. That's all I'm looking to do. So, yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, we talk.
Yeah.
We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
A lot of people on the entrepreneurial journey. We talk about the fear of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
The faith and action it takes to punch through it.
Absolutely.
And you are that personified.
Thank you, man.
Right. And so when I hear your story, I'm sure it relates to so many people that are listening to this episode, because like getting knocked out or knocked down and trying to find it when it's lost is not freaking easy.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Not
like,
at all.
it's not easy.
Not at all.
You know what I'm saying? And so finding it, and then you have to have the courage. Yeah. Because it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, you found it again.
Right.
But then you have to muster up the courage. Like, being in those shoes, speak to the entrepreneurial communities, being in those shoes as a person that's trying to be resourceful, if one student calls and says, "That's it. I need some help, man. I just, I really need it right now."
Yep, that's all it took.
But you kind of scrapped your way through.
Had to.
You said you had to.
Had to. Yeah, I had.
There's a lot in what you're saying. I need you to go a couple levels
deeper.
deeper.
Yeah, I had so many. When you have mouths to feed that come before you, when you have a family, there's more writing. That dream sometimes gets distorted because it's got to make sense for the people in your home. I can go teach all day and I can come back with $0 in my pocket. That doesn't help feed anybody here. Me having a black belt around my waist and being called a great teacher doesn't help feed anybody here. So I had to find a way to make practical sense out of it. And I had that motivation in my face daily, right? And I just couldn't watch them watch me deteriorate.
Wow.
Couldn't. My family is resilient. A lot of resilient women in my family, and that own businesses. I got a cousin that owns a great business down south, and she's just awesome. And I was like, if she can, she's navigating all this with her family. So I'm not the only one. When you realize you're not the only one that has the issue, right? And then you take yourself out of that, you start to zoom out. You're like, oh, this is not the first. I always think about problems this way. Is it the first time this happened? Is it the last time it's going to happen? Probably not. There are probably people that came before me who were on the ground that experienced the same problem. They probably got through it. We won't be able to tell because we're looking at headstones here, but I could probably tell. I could probably guess that most people ended up fighting through it at some point. And if they didn't, I will. Because I had an obligation to them, which I think really was higher than myself. Right? When I was younger, my 20s, I wanted to teach and be the greatest teacher of all, right? They put me on the top of a mountain, put me on the Mount Rushmore. But after that, things changed. I was like, that's whatever. That's not as cool as trying to really help people and get them where they had to go. So I think that was a motivation for me. And also, I guess another layer down was, obviously what are my kids gonna say, but because they could probably remember some of those things, but what are my students gonna say, if I just pack it up. And I've been teaching them to go hard and adapt to this and adjust this and give them all this advice, sage advice, right? But then not be personifying it. So I wasn't in those couple of months initially. I didn't feel like I was setting a good example for anyone. I was just like, we're going to sit here and eat. I'm cool. I gained a couple pounds, probably a little bit more than a couple pounds. And then, then I looked at the road and I was like, let's do this. And, by the time, it was interesting. By the time the student called me, I was in the best shape of my life. I was like, I'm actually good to teach you. Like, we're okay. I can get my leg wherever it needs to go. I don't have a belly in the way. I can run. Like, you know what I mean? So it was like, it was perfect. So it was like, what are the odds that I get that call at that time? And, it was very auspicious to me even to this day and I had to be open to it mentally too. Like, all right, well, if I do this again, we know one student's going to turn into 5, right? So that entrepreneurial mindset came back. Came right back, kicked back on, yo, you can do this. But I had to work in the daytime as well. I was still doing flooring work during the day. I wasn't eating. I wasn't taking a lunch until the end of the day so I could leave sooner to go teach. So I literally did flooring work all day, didn't eat, then went straight from there, maybe grabbed something, if that, went straight to teach 2 or 3 lessons, and then came back to the house. So like my day was getting filled up, and gradually I started to return more to what I felt was more me, but a different version, because a lot of people say they go back to themselves, but I feel like I left that guy behind and returned. But it was an amazing transitional period for sure. Very introspective.
That's strong, bro. How many kids do you have?
I have one daughter, and she is 5.5, going on 21. So she is an incredible little girl. I just saw her this morning, and she's the generator for me. That's like I look at her and that's everything for me.
That's beautiful.
Everything for me. So I have a lot. It's a lot of pressure, as you can imagine, but it's a great pressure to have. To be better every day and try to demonstrate an example for her. This is how a man should treat you. This is what your dad did. It wasn't just martial arts that I did. This is because ultimately your legacy is what your kids say about you, really. Other people, students may say, hell, he's a great teacher, but that's not going to matter to her, I'm sure. Yeah, he was a great teacher. We know that. But what did he do outside of that role? What did he do on the mat? How did he help somebody? Those kinds of stories, I think, are important for her to know ultimately at the end of the day. And I do a lot of that through martial arts. I don't talk about any of the things I do for anybody, but you're not supposed to. Right. Those are things that are done for what they are. But my daughter is literally the center. She's the center.
When you think of her, and you think of your journey, and your business, and what you do on a day-to-day basis, what are you hoping that translates
Big question.
To her?
That's a good question. I would hope that she takes some of the principles away that I do talk to her. I do talk to her about business a lot. I want her to take away being a good person, not allowing the world to change that, not allowing a bad experience to change that, being consistent. It's hard to do that when you get hurt strongly. Or you get disappointed or let down, but I hope that she would take that. I would hope she also takes the tenacity and the perseverance to keep going forward. When something happens and something fails, we talk about this word all the time. She can probably fill in the sentence, but we always talk about perseverance. That is one of the tenets of Taekwondo, funny enough. It's something that we talk about in classes when we teach, but not many people live by those principles: courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit. And I feel like I've had a life lesson under each tenet in a big way. So perseverance is a big one, because you have to keep going. You don't have to change the goal. You can be flexible to your approach to that goal. I think that would be something I hope to leave behind, and a lot of love as well. I love what I do, and I want her to be involved in something that she loves doing. I don't need to make her, a Malarkey lineage of martial artists. I want her to take whatever she can honestly find that she can take from what I'm doing and apply it to what she's doing. She's into gymnastics, loves gymnastics. She's into baseball now. We played baseball yesterday. let's do that. Let's figure out how we can be tenacious with that. How can we, but have fun with it, right? Because I have fun with what I'm doing, and I'm so hard sometimes as a teacher. I'm like, I wouldn't still be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't fun for me. So I have to find a way to introduce the fun part and still talk about those principles. That's a big thing in my classes. I always try to connect life outside to what we're doing right now, real time on the mat.
That's the best.
That's what, because you have to.
That's the best.
Why? It can't just be, I understand self-defense is a system, right, for protecting yourself. I get that. But even if that was all it was intended to do, that doesn't mean that it can't be remodified to help enhance people's lives. No. So you can take any activity and make it something larger if you can look at the principles and the framework.
Can you give us an example? Of applying real life to one of your students on spot, with Taekwondo and martial arts?
Yeah, so I had a pretty cool story. There was I have many, but there was a student that had lost his parents a long time ago in a car accident. His grandmother was dropping him off at this point and coming to classes. And when it happened, I didn't know if he was still going to stick around or not, because that's a pretty traumatic thing to happen to somebody. And I found the kid may have been like 6 or 7. He was coming to classes, but he was having, obviously, as you might imagine, trouble focusing, right? I don't know how he did it, but I understood that he was coming because it was an outlet for him. And as we started to discuss and talk about things, he would get down on himself sometimes because he wasn't performing or kicking the same way everybody else was. And I was like, you don't have to worry about comparison kills a lot of joy. Don't compare what you're doing and juxtapose yourself to this other person. And they have the same rank, right? So he's a blue belt and he's a blue belt. So we should theoretically look the same under the structure. But that's not the case, especially if you have years between you. So I said, you need to just focus on what you do well. And I want you to hammer down on that. And I started by obviously complimenting, giving them a sandwich, right? Here's what we can fit. Here's what you're doing right. Here's where I think we can go. Because I think the initial belief, the biggest factor in student success is the teacher's belief in the student to be able to learn. Not that they will learn, not that they can learn, that they will learn.
That's strong.
When you believe in the student, and I love teaching. I love teaching any subject, but with him, I watched the process for him. I watched his back straighten up. I watched him build himself back up, and I'm sure family was heavily involved in this. But the little role I played in just not being critical, but giving him praise, adjusting my praise to criticism ratio in real time with him, watched him straighten up. So it was like that really was like more the power of not just the belief, but the power in giving him a vision. Because I had a vision for myself. I was like, I still have a vision for myself as a teacher. I'm not where I want to be. You think I'm where I want to be right now? My kick could be better. I've been practicing 30 years. My kick should be able to tear a hole in the wall without touching it. But it's not. So when I started comparing and started talking about myself like that and humanizing myself more to him instead of being this, pariah, which I'm not. I'm just a human being. But they don't see that when they walk in. They see you see a black belt, you think they should know all the answers. Maybe, but we don't have all the answers to everything, especially when life's involved. And making that the big disparity I see, and I'm not criticizing, just observation is that not many people can pair their life experience with what they're doing, with what they're teaching. That's important because your students get so much more out of that than you just teaching them a set of skills, right? Or things to memorize, let's say, right? But teaching you how to think, not what to think.
That's huge.
It's important. So
who's your ideal client?
Ideal client. I do train a few celebrities at this juncture, which I'm grateful for. That's a big thing.
That's becoming your ideal client.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Praise the Lord.
Praise God, right? I would hope. If you're hearing me, I'm available. But I think people that are self-motivated, driven, want to be there. Obviously for kids that's very different than kids are there for different reasons than adults. Kids are there because mommy and daddy tell them you got to come. But I think anybody that's got an open mind is ideal because then they're not coming in with sort of this predetermination of what class should be like or what they should be doing. They're just there to experience and then try to personalize that experience for themselves. So ideally, could be a kid, but they don't have to have confidence. I think some of as a matter of fact, I know this to be true, the people that I least expected or were least expected to be great at what we did became great. People that, so
really?
For example,
wait, that's a little, that sounds counterproductive. No, I get it because I work with insurance agents. I work with, upstart entrepreneurs and like, I get it.
Yeah.
But you're a 6-degree black belt, bro.
Almost, not yet. Almost. I got to pass.
You know what I'm saying? But I guess it does translate.
It translates.
Because
it translates.
People come in, they say they're gonna, highlight the sky, paint the moon, hang the sun,
and don't do any of that,
and
don't do any of it, right? So
that's crazy.
And I always pay attention to that. There are people, for example, in our field that
don't do any of that.
Yeah, they perform well, right, and they do great job kicking and punching, and they're naturally talented, right? People that come in, that's kind of ideal as we want to see as teachers because it's easy to work with. I don't have to really do that much. Right. My job's easy. I just have to kind of modify this, tweak this, and you're good. You're on your way. Just practice this, right? You're good. But the people that have probably some of the most corrections, like children I've worked with that have had learning disabilities or classified with learning disabilities, man, the strides that they have taken to become, like if you watch day one, and sometimes the parents it's hard for parents to be objective with their own child. So they're still coming in year 2, year 3. They're like, oh man, he's not doing what the other kids are doing. I said, that's because you're comparing him. But what about if we compare him to day one of his journey?
That's strong, bro. I love it.
And I've talked like that.
I can tell it's conviction. That's why I'm saying it's strong because it sounds like a DNA type thing. Like, let's just go right to this root right here, though.
Right.
As opposed to, because we're not winning this battle.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not. And parents do this all the time.
All the time.
I do this.
Guilty of it. Guilty. But I've seen it so much, and I've gotten a lot of joy out of seeing people that really people I was like, man, I don't know if this is the thing for you. And after about a year, 2 years, it takes them a little longer. Man, they come along and make such huge strides, and not just on the mat. It's what they're doing. They get we got students that have had learning disabilities that get student of the month, end up getting declassified, coming out of whatever rough situation they had, coming out of tough family situations. I know a woman that we trained that had never trained before, a lifelong smoker. I watched her reverse her hair color naturally by training.
Wow.
Naturally. Never dyed her hair. This is an old school type fashion woman. Reversed her hair color. So there's so many benefits to doing it. But if you compare yourself to everybody else in the room, you're never going to be content, So that. Hopefully there's a couple of lessons in that one.
How do you market to your client base or to your student base? How do you get more business, and do you have a capacity?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I pretty much use the social media. I have brochures and whatnot, so I use Instagram and Facebook largely to try to do that. Sometimes I'll run ads, create reels, et cetera. It seems to be that marketing has kind of transmogrified, right? It's less paper. Right. And it's more the digital age, 100%. Right? What can you access from your phone and with one touch, right? If you gotta swipe and search, 2-step, 3-step processes, you're losing people.
Right, correct.
If you got to be able to click that link in the bio and it takes you to the flow, and then you can do boom from there. So that's largely how I do it. But as we're continuing to grow little by little, we're not a huge school, but I always say we're a very deep school. I believe in generating what I call a community in the school. It's not a gym. So that, just labeling it that has made a big difference. So a lot of word of mouth spreads from our parents and largely our mothers, who are great, along to other people. And that's kind of how we get that combination, that flow of things helps. But that's pretty much how I do things for right now. But it might change, and I'm always evaluating how we've done things and how we can improve. But it's hard to keep up with everybody doing the next thing and, all the algorithms and whatnot. Yeah. I just do what I can and try to be genuine about it without being salesy. Yeah. I like to be very organic. You come, great. Right. But that's kind of kind of the philosophy we have. There was a mother last week that she couldn't make it to pick up her son from camp, and so I had one of our instructors take him after camp to his house. That's the kind of thing we're looking at. I think that's more meaningful than teaching you kicks and punches and saying good job, because I think that demonstrates a desire. I want these people to do well in their life. Like when people are capable of doing great things and they're competent and they're healthy, atmospheres change in every workspace. Every workspace. You got people that are happy when they come into work, they produce. You got people that are healthy and having good work-life balance, they do great things.
Right.
So I think that Taekwondo, if I can be a small part of that contribution to the society that we have, I think that'll be a win.
It's huge, man. When you think of your academy, the community you're building, what are some of your long-term dreams and visions for what you're doing? Great
questions here. I would obviously love to expand, to reach more people, to do the most amount of good I can for the most amount of people. That's the key. So I'd love to spin off of what we're doing. Actually, I'm in the early steps with my partner now of trying to create a community center off of this, to try to provide services to people, therapy, mental counseling, those kinds of things. Provide maybe a little bit of Taekwondo classes for them as well, but finding ways to get our hands into the community itself and really pull out. I know we do great work at the school, but I want to go a little deeper than that and try to see and recruit people that are in different spaces that want to share their time, volunteer their expertise, particularly helping children. I have a passion for the youth. I really love working with kids and of any age, really. I really do. And I know I kind of speak their language. I know what they need. I know what, in sales, I listen for what you're not saying. I don't listen for what you are saying. So when kids talk, there's always something underneath that. And I try to find my way to that and try to, work with them in terms of getting them what they need. So I think those are, that's one of the goals for sure, at least two of the goals. And then we're going to be putting up, doing tournaments, hosting tournaments soon. So that'll be a great thing. That'll be, awesome to get sort of different schools and different disciplines together in the same space. Because a lot of I won't say it's not true for us and for me particularly, but I like working in spaces where I'm uncomfortable. So I've got a very small background in jiu-jitsu, very small, but I put myself in that space because I was getting too comfortable where I was at. I was like, I'm a master, but I'm like, I feel like I can walk on air here. I should be feeling like I'm learning something new, and I'm not there, and I'm not challenging myself.
Right.
I know when I'm not doing that.
That's
so
good.
What's the next thing? And I put myself in some uncomfortable spaces, got put to sleep a couple times proudly, and picked things up. But then I but I networked, right? I was like, leave your business card on top of you when you're done. I'll call you tomorrow, see how we can work together. That's it. That's
crazy.
So yeah, that's me. I'm a nutcase, but yeah, I think those are great things. But the martial arts community is so many people in different backgrounds. You got people that are, black belts that are lawyers. You got people that are, color belts that are in insurance or heading businesses of themselves. So it's like, how do you bring together? It's a community in and of itself because not everyone's coming from the same space.
Right.
So how do we get all of these different people to be resources to make something better happen, particularly for people that look like us, and our children? That's a huge thing for me because we need those institutions and we need people that look like us to demonstrate positive images for them and to do 100%. Good and do good for them. So leave them with something. That's what I think about now. It's like I probably have a good amount of time in front of me, but I don't like to think that way. So my days are like, let me try to wring out the towel and see how much I can do. I have trouble sleeping because I always think about what I could have done in the day, even if I had a full day. We had a great day last week. We finished our first summer camp ever, which was awesome. Ran smoothly. It was fantastic. Nothing but smiles all day from kids, and it was wonderful. Then we had a test on that Friday, and I was like, and I thought back, I was like, I'm really blessed to have that. Like, I was so busy that day, and my partner was like, she was like, you need help with anything? I was like, no, I got it. And I was like, but she had realized that, like, I was just in that space, in that workspace, and I was like, but I was thinking, like, I'm so blessed to have a busy business today. Like, it's not always like that, right? I could be the other way. I could be sitting here, letting the weed tumbles go on. You know what I mean? But we're busy today, and people can see that, which is awesome. Which is great. So I'm blessed.
That's fantastic, man.
Thank you.
Well, every entrepreneur aspires to have a busy business and a place that they can make impact.
Absolutely.
Like that's the dream, right? And so you're doing that. That's
Thank
awesome,
you, man.
brother.
I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that.
No doubt. I know you're writing a book.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you got going on there?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually writing it this morning too. I had this idea many years ago to try to put all of the lessons I had. You had mentioned earlier in our podcast about having it all up here. And I was like, I got it up here, but I'm probably like the last generation of people that has it all up here. Like, I can access any lesson from here. I don't prepare when I teach classes, for those who are listening. I walk in and I look at who's there and I know what we need to do. I adapt. I have some kind of sense of what needs to happen, but then I usually adjust. And I had the idea years back, especially with the English background. I love to write. So I was like, well, I've been doing Taekwondo long enough and have enough experience here. Let's see if I can write an intro level, sort of high level view of what Taekwondo is, my personal experience with it as I've watched it sort of transition from self-defense sort of to business, right? And that's the structure of a business, because that's been a very interesting transition to experience and being involved in that. And then how to sort of give some very specific things that we do on the mat to people that can probably use it in real life. So a lot of the book involves not just the history or my accolades, which aren't important. It's more about how do I connect what we're doing on the mat, technique, how can I use that in life? How can this block be, this high block here to block my head, how can I use that or think about that as a way to avoid something that's coming, right? Or, there's different theories and philosophies, and try to connect all those points for people to, the general person, right? Uneducated person in this field to be able to look at and say, I got something out of that and I can probably use that. Obviously, if they want to come to our school, I can, accelerate some of that for them. But I think the book itself it's coming along really well. I'm not done with it yet, but I've got a couple more chapters to flesh out. But hopefully in the next 6 months, it'll be on the bookshelves, and I'll be celebrating that. But I always had a drive to be an author. And my daughter, funny enough, as I read, I'm an avid reader, a voracious reader. And I read with her as often as I possibly can. And she told me the other day that she wanted to be an author.
Wow.
I say the other day, I mean like maybe 2 months ago. But, she wanted to do that. And that was another accelerator as well, which was, okay, well, if you want to be an author, maybe I should show you how to do that. And then my partner, obviously, her belief in me has been amazing. She's like, hey, here's sat with me at 6 a.m. and outlined, hey, here's what you can do. And I'm like, okay, I mean, because some projects you put on pause because you're so busy. You're like, I'll get to that down the road, but down the road, I'm going on 36 this year. I'm like, down the road, 40, I don't know. I don't know. My life is only going to get busier. I should write as much as I can now.
That's good.
And make time. I'm a big make time person. I hear a lot of people say they don't have time. Make time.
Yeah, make it.
If you don't make time for your health, I mean, you're going to be in a hospital bed wishing you did.
Right.
So those have been some of the drives, external drives and internal drives for me to try to produce this book and get it to my students as well, because I think it memorializes a lot of the things, the concepts that I personally have that many others may not share, right? As black belts all have their different values, and some of us are big on the sparring and the fighting, right? But what are the philosophies that lie in that fighting? Look at Bruce Lee and all the things he introduced in the 60s and the 70s. A lot of that was Indian philosophy, but it wasn't made popular until he started talking about it.
Right.
So knowing that martial arts is not just a physical system, but it's a mental structure, and it's also a way to live your life if it's taught to you that way. Like boxing, for example, is a skill set, but you hear about a lot of boxers in the news getting in trouble, right? A lot of issues doing this and that, and staying out late and hitting people. How many fifth-degree black belts do you hear about? Sitting at a bar, A, and B, getting. I mean, there are some of us, right? They're out there, but much fewer. It's very disparate. There's a reason for that, because of how it's taught. So I think that therein that lies the difference.
Makes sense. Through much of what you shared today, you have, a rich history of work that you put in. I mean,
thanks, man.
I didn't know how old you were. but now I can tie it all back. It's almost 30 years of like practicing,
Yeah.
you know, becoming, teaching, educating in martial arts.
Yeah.
You know, and so through all the people that you've, you know, had the blessings to train and come alongside their journey or teach them a life lesson through, you know, your ability to have a academy or studio where you're teaching people life on and off the mat, the way you explain it.
Yeah.
And so you start to, our podcast really, when we talk about sowing seeds, that's exactly what that is.
Thank you, man.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, and so it's only getting bigger. You're now you're going, you know, you've had a harvest, you're continuing to harvest, right?
Yes.
And see, you know,
Amen.
more fruit from what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about where you're going or what you're set up to do,
Yeah.
you know, what kind of harvest are you believing for in your community? What kind of harvest are you believing for in your practice and with some of the kids and even adults that you're training?
Big stuff. I feel like I'm in that season now where I'm starting to reap. It's been a very interesting, it's been a rough year and a half, but I think that I can see a lot of those blessings start to come in little bits and pieces, and getting parts of myself back together. And as I do that, I always say, as I improve everybody else around me. When I get blessed by something, I immediately want to bless somebody else. That's a big thing, or give in some way. So I would hope that in whatever ways that I receive anything really that's going to come, that I can take all the people that have been our base, which have been with me almost from the beginning, like in the garage. I mean, if you can imagine 30 people coming to a basement, you know, on a random street, coming to train with you on mats, right? And we didn't even have mats down for our first class, so I still had people there at that time. So if we can get people not just in the door, but believing in where I'm trying to take them in their personal lives, I think that we can do a lot more. The more I grow, the more I'm going to be able to take care of the people that we have and have them pass it down as well. Because I do train people to also be instructors. I have help. So I when I teach, I'm also getting them to think in some regards about how they would teach somebody else. So it's almost like passing down a skill set in a sense, not just the business, but the skill set, obviously. So how do you teach somebody? You know, I never thought I was going to be a teacher. I know I didn't have that in my mind when I was growing up. So me, probably the least of all people. So now that I'm in this position where I'm master whatever, it's kind of cool. I always shun the role, because I always say I'm really just training, but I'm taking people along with me. So you're just getting to see me in different stages. So fourth degree look very different. First, second degree look very different. Sixth degree very different. So I'm hoping that you know, whatever is in store for us, I hope that we can still keep all the people that we have. Obviously, grow and expand. We always want to do that. It is a business, but I believe in the people that we have in our community that we've grown. It's really strong. We've been through some personal stuff. People have lost, you know, fathers, parents, people who have needed rides home, all that kind of stuff. And maybe they take that and they go do that in their own community, in different communities that they have, you know, whether it's church or whatever else. But that's the goal. They see it more, and then they get impacted more positively by it. Like I said, particularly the youth. That's where a lot of my concentration is, because I don't know. It is hard to change adults' minds, but we do have very, very open-minded people, thankfully, in our community. But it's a lot easier to train children to think sometimes and get out. But I think every age group has had some really big victories that I've seen over time, and I've easily taught over 5,000 people in my lifetime, easily, and probably more than double that in classes.
Wow.
So, and I've traveled and taught in different parts of the world as well. I've taught on the street. So, I mean, if they see that, if I can be an example of doing what needs to be done, however you got to get it done. I'm very gritty. Get it done. Yeah. And if you can do that, then you start with somebody young and you do that. Imagine what that person will be like when they're 20, 30, 25. You know, they could do anything. So I think that's the big thing, because there are a lot of conflicting images that we get on TV, a lot of conflicting images that we get on Instagram and social media. Everyone's comparing themselves. Nobody's putting their phone down and just working on them.
Right.
I would say very few.
Right.
So that's kind of the thing, is your competition. I left tournament. I stopped doing tournaments 7 years ago. I haven't once won a trophy since then in life, right? It's more like a you versus you project. And I realized that, you know, because I was a big competitor. I was huge. I trained insane, but, you know, but I wanted to be the best. And that mentality was instilled in me through the teachers I had and my home environment, watching people just be, you know, the best at what they did. So, you know, you watch your father get up and still go to work at 60 years old and not be late. You're never late where you need to go, because I've been blessed to see that and have that. Not everyone has that, but as a teacher, I've learned you have to sometimes be different things to different people. I've had to be a father, I've had to be a brother, I've had to be a friend, I've had to be a lot of different things. And those are special roles for people to think about me that way. So I don't take those roles lightly. But it's a great opportunity, man, and it's a calling for sure.
Dude, your humility, your compassion, your joy, your service, your dedication, your commitment, it just bleeds through, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
It bleeds through. I mean,
Thank you.
If I were, well, matter of fact, I have an 11-year-old son.
Yeah.
And I think we should talk about, you know, what that looks like. Because I was about to say if I had, but I'm thinking more like a promotion for you. Like if you're out there and you're looking for like someone who can speak into the life of your kid or you from a martial arts standpoint, why not Chris? I mean, you know, I just love what you're doing, brother.
Thanks,
so
man.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank
Speak
you.
Life. A man is reaping harvest, making things happen, making change in his community, and punching walls down.
That's it.
And
and kicking.
Kicking doors through the just kicking doors down, man. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us.
I really appreciate it.
God bless you, and thank y'all for listening and watching. We appreciate you. Hope you got some value. Take care.